Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live edition of the Highbury Squad. It's a lockdown series, episode 59. It's the final act of the season, 8 weeks left. And boy, do we have a very special guest who's going to help us figure out not only the rest of the season, but maybe our future too. Here we go. Squaddies. Joining me once again back in the house is Super Kevin Campbell.
Oh, let's go. I'm ready. Let's do it.
I think you're going to be ready for this one. And I've long wanted to get our next guest on the show, one of my favorite journalists for European football, period. And if you're a Bundesliga fan, you'll recognize his voice. But the way he paints pictures and tells stories about football, welcome to the Highbury Squad, Mr. Kevin Hatchard.
Great to be here. Kev set the bar high with his high energy start. So that's set the path for me to follow. I'm excited.
I mean, he does this, Kevin, to be honest with you. There's no escape with this one, I tell you. Just when you think you're having a bad day, Super Kevin Campbell will get you off your feet.
That's what you need. That's what you need.
Absolutely. And thank you to Football Prizes, our great sponsor. We got something special for you at the end of the show, so you guys know all about that. Let's just get stuck into it. We have Mr. Kevin Hatchard for about 35, 40 minutes, and Squaddies, you're going to be at the ready, I know, with your questions. There's so much going on with Arsenal, Kev, and I just wanted to get one very important question out the way first, though. And Super Kev, you'll understand this. Is it true you're a fan of the Eurovision Song Contest?
Oh, massively. Absolutely, massively. Yes. As are my kids.
Okay.
So they've been collecting the old CDs, and I'll be doing some of the previews for the betting website that I work for. I'll be doing all the previews for this year's contest.
I love it.
Yes,
I love it.
very much so.
You probably agree with me then that Cyprus got completely robbed in 2018 with Elena Ferreira's song.
Oh, with Fuego. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's our shot this year with the song Diablo? You know that our girl upset the priest, Kev. She's very attractive. You'd love the video, I'm just saying. But she upset the priests in Cyprus. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, that's never a good start.
No, that is a good start. It's a bad place to start in Cyprus.
It's a bad place to start. Okay, so speaking of a bad place to start or a good place to start is Arsenal Football Club, in the sense that it's not been a great year in the Premier League, Mr. Hatchard. And, we have 17 players out on loan total. But the notables are some in the league that you cover the most, Bundesliga. We've got Guendouzi at Hertha Berlin. We have Mavropanos at Stuttgart. Obviously, Kolasinac at Schalke. We sold Mustafi to Schalke. Torreira's at Atletico. We've got Odegaard and Ceballos on our end. Got to figure that out, and we'll get to that eventually. You've got the English players at Newcastle and West Brom. There's a lot of moving parts for the Arsenal this summer. And Kevin and I have said on the show consistently, this is probably our most significant summer transfer window. Can we start with Bundesliga in particular? And the likes of Guendouzi, Mavropanos, Kolasinac. What's your take? Mavropanos seems the one to be shining. He did great for Greece as well this week. Had a great game. Can you just give us an overview of the talent that we have out there and how it could play for us come the summer transfer window?
Yeah, I think Mavropanos is a good place to start because he's a guy that, as you will know, Sven Mislintat is a huge fan of. He's now the sporting director for Stuttgart. He was in a prominent role in Arsenal's recruitment team as well, wanted that sporting director's job, but when he realised he wasn't going to get that, he moved on. I still think that's probably an error by Arsenal, but we can go into that. And they want to keep him for longer. They would like to do a longer loan deal, but he has had injury problems, and I think that's what's held him back a little bit. But he is playing in this back three. He's got a very good coach in Pellegrino Matarazzo, who is excellent at developing good young players. And if you look at Mislintat's approach at Stuttgart. He's done a very good job of bringing in these young guys with a coach that he knows can improve them, and they're going to stay up comfortably this season. And even though Mavropanos hasn't been a regular because of the injuries, when he's been called upon, he's done a good job, and he will have learned a lot, I think.
You know, Kev's always said when we look at, you know, the players that we have out and the players that we want to bring in, Kev has felt like Mavropanos might be a value card for us. And we say that with so much respect because clearly both of his stints going on loan in Germany have been successful. The injuries, even when he came out here in LA and I met him, he had an injury then and really couldn't play. And then when you look at us, maybe probably missing out, and it looks like Ibrahim Konate is going to end up at Liverpool. But I asked this question because Kev thinks that we could get value out of him and maybe bring someone else in. But when you look at Konate and how young he is too, and you look at Mavropanos, is there a huge gulf in talent? I ask this genuinely because we could save ourselves a lot of money by putting it in other areas of the pitch, Kevin.
I feel like there is a gap from what I've seen of Konate, and he's been unlucky with injuries as well, certainly this season. I feel that there's perhaps a higher ceiling with Konate. I think if you look at the way he brings the ball out, the way he's happy to dribble past players who are trying to press him, the way he's so strong in the air, I think there's a fantastic player there. Now, that's not to say Mavropanos is not a good player, but I don't think he's quite of that caliber. However, he's definitely a guy you could bring in. I think if you allowed him more time at Stuttgart, where you know he's going to play, where you know he's got a sporting director that really believes in him and a coach that's worked with him well, I think then that value is developed. And then maybe you've got a player who's ready to come in and challenge for a first-team place, or at very least be part of that squad. I'd like to see more of Pablo Mari as well at Arsenal. You listen to guys who watched him on a regular basis for Flamengo in Brazil. They will tell you that their success was largely based on his ability because it allowed them to play a high line. It allowed them to do something Brazilian teams don't do a lot of. So I'd like to see him play more for Arsenal. And then I think that would be an important judgment that Arteta and the guys above him will have to make about him as well.
Super Kev, I want to bring you in here too, because a lot of the squaddies in live chat, and thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight, are talking about, I want to just reverse a little because Mavropanos is part of that Mislintat Stuttgart. And Kevin said, like, he's doing a great job there. But some of our folks are saying, well, he brought in Lichtsteiner and a few other dodgy players. But did we take a step back losing someone like Mislintat in your opinion, Super Kev? Or have we moved forward from maybe a mistake we made and rectifying it, seeing what he is doing in Germany right now?
No, I don't think. I just didn't think it worked. And sometimes it doesn't work. Mislintat has a good record in Germany. But the key to what Mislintat done in Germany is young players are given the time to develop. In England, you don't get the time to develop for whatever reason. And fans tend to put an onus. So if a young player plays well in one game, oh, he's the saviour. No, he's not the saviour. And Sven Mislintat brought in an experienced player. Lichtsteiner was an experienced player because we didn't have the money to go out there and splash the money. Our issue is we need to upgrade this squad. And we haven't got time to be developing too many players. Because if you're developing too many players, that means you're never going to move up because the form's going to be up and down, and we've already seen that.
See, I do think that's really interesting because I think if you're going to go with a guy like Mislintat, you have to go all in. If you're going to go with that real kind of director of football model and you're going to say, right, I want you to set the tone. I want you to develop a football philosophy working with the coach or the manager, as they would obviously call it in England. And you have to allow him to set that at all levels. And you have to say, okay, for a while, this might be a bit bumpy. We might have a few results where it's not working out. But where we want to get to is important enough to have that short-term pain. What I've seen from Arsenal, and it has been better, you guys know this far better than me, but I think there has been an improvement maybe recently in terms of how expansive they want to be. But what we've seen with Arsenal is that short-term pain anyway, but what's the overall direction of travel? What's the plan? And I think you can stomach that as a fan to an extent if you buy into it. And if you say, okay, and we've seen this with clubs, we've seen this in Germany quite a lot, that you see young squads being developed and it goes a bit wonky in the meantime, but you know where they're trying to get to, you can get it. Whereas if you look at Arsenal at times under Arteta, I just wonder what the overall plan is, and they still aren't getting the results. If it's a kind of, okay, we win now, great. But does it look like a squad right now that can win now? And I think as well, if you haven't got a huge amount of money, and they don't compared with some of their competitors, if you develop that talent and you sell it on, then that allows you to upgrade that squad in a much more clever way. So I understand completely what Kev's saying about, do we have time to develop these players? But I always think it's better if you've got an overarching plan rather than kind of going window to window, opportunity to opportunity.
I think Arteta's got a plan, Kev. He's definitely got a plan. The key for everything was there were stages.
What is it, Casey? What's the plan?
I'm just going to say there's stages to every plan. The first part of the plan was to clear the dressing room of the poison. That's the first part he had to do. He won a trophy, which was great, but he still had the problem at the football club. And you know as well as I do, if you've got rotten apples in a barrel, the good ones go bad. And whether that is the bad ones making the atmosphere wrong or what, I don't know. I'm not in the dressing room. But one thing I do know is if there's a toxic atmosphere within the football club, no chance. It's not going to work. Arteta has a plan. He has to get the club to the summer, 100%. Like I always say, we've said it on here before, for about 10, 12 years, everybody, not even Arsenal fans, every opposition fan said, what Arsenal need is a centre-half and a centre midfielder. It never got addressed. One summer, Arteta addressed that issue straight away. So he knows what he's doing. He knows he's got the plan. The key is there's a lot more moving parts on the inside of Arsenal because the money isn't readily available and they have to recruit a lot smarter than they have been doing.
So I want to get to players like this, Kev, you know, and you've seen them in Bundesliga, market value. Someone like Guendouzi, who was a fan favourite for a long time before the incident at Brighton, and then subsequently the supposed kind of interaction with Arteta. And of course, we've mentioned Mavropanos as well. We need to strengthen, there's no doubt about that. But some of the players that have gone out on loan, I've said to Super Kev that maybe their market value's diminished. I think Guendouzi's maybe has done. I think Torreira's has done. I think Mavropanos maybe is elevated. I don't know what we'd even get for Kolasinac. What's your take on some of these key players out in Europe right now who are on loan and the value they might be able to bring to us? So then we can maybe go out and accumulate some money to get Hakimi, who we'll get to eventually.
I think Kolasinac has been a huge disappointment, but I think we have to bear in mind that he's part of a Schalke squad and a Schalke club that is a mess. It's going to go down to the second tier in Germany, and they're going to go down as one of the worst teams the Bundesliga has ever seen. Certainly in my time covering the league, which is quite a long time now, I've not seen a team as consistently bad as them. Mustafi's gone in there. Mustafi's gone in there and hasn't helped. I mean, there are so many things, Soph, that have happened. I mean, you look at them, bad recruitment. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about. Sporting director, not adequate in terms of bringing in the right people. Infighting higher up the chain at Schalke. The wrong coaches, the wrong players, a bad atmosphere. again, as Kev alluded to, with Arsenal at one stage, and it is corrosive. And, Mustafi arrived and Kolasinac arrived. One of the first things they did was effectively get the coach fired because they staged a bit of a mini revolt. And we saw that Christian Gross, the former Tottenham boss, he was removed. Now, he was removed after a 5-1 defeat against Stuttgart, so he may have gone anyway. But all of the build-up to that game all week was about Mustafi and Kolasinac being two of the ringleaders in what was effectively an insurrection against the coach. And that's all they've contributed.
Kev, is that because he was ex-Spurs? I mean...
Well, listen, it just smells of the rotten attitude and culture that was in our club, Sophie. Yeah. Look what they do. They've been there 5 minutes and they're getting the manager fired. It's a disgrace.
And I think the Kolasinac thing was even more disappointing because he's a Gelsenkirchen boy. He's from that area. So they very much saw him as somebody who would do the opposite. They saw him as somebody that would come in, that would try and unite the squad, that would be a real leader, that would kind of give them a kind of banner to rally behind. And it just hasn't worked at all. If anything, they've got worse. Mustafi, you will have seen, I was actually the commentator in that game, that horrendous own goal against Wolfsburg. And that pretty much sums up how things are going. And he made a bad mistake for another of the goals. He's slow. He just hasn't made any kind of tangible difference. Guendouzi, I think, is an interesting player. There are things about his game I really like. He's busy. He wants the ball. He wants to get involved. He wants to make challenges. He's at the referee. I don't think that's always a terrible thing. I think that shows somebody who wants to stamp their authority on the game, but he has made mistakes. And again, he's part of a team that's not playing very well. He's part of a Hertha team that is fighting against relegation.
They're 14th. Yeah, they're 14th, right, Kev, right now?
Yeah. And again, it's funny how much this keeps coming up, but you go back to a lack of an overall plan. They have a lot of money at Hertha. They've got a guy called Lars Windhorst who has injected a huge amount of money there. And they've just gone out and bought toys. They've gone, oh, he's good. I like the look of him. We've heard of him. And it's all been put together with no real plan about how it's going to fit together. And that's been a huge disappointment, I think, for Hertha fans. They've got through a lot of different coaches. The guy who they've got there at the moment, Paul Dardai, is a former central midfielder. He's a Hertha guy through and through. So if Guendouzi doesn't hit the level that he would expect from a central midfielder, either as a player or as a guy, then Guendouzi won't be in that team.
Kev, it's true. There's been times where he's been dropped, hasn't he? For discipline and stuff like that.
Yeah, and performances that haven't been great. So he's had some great moments. So he scored a brilliant goal against Schalke, but then, as I've mentioned, a lot of players could do that because Schalke aren't performing very well. So some good performances, but it's not been a consistent level of performance.
Yeah, it's Mavropanos really is the one that has had a positive loan spell in Germany. And so, Kev, I know we have you for a short time, so I want to get stuck into the nuts and bolts because part of us, Kevin and I did a show where we were trying to sell players and see how much money we make because we know that Arsenal Football Club and many other football clubs, especially in this COVID time, financially, there are huge challenges in play. It's not easy. Maybe in a normal market, Spurs could have sold Harry Kane for 200 million, but in a market like today, maybe they'll just get 100 million for him. Haaland, apparently today is on his reps and his dad are on a global tour. It seems like college football, to be honest with you, here where everyone gets, kind of wined and dined in terms of signing for a pro team across all the sports. It's really interesting to kind of see the landscape financially. But for Arsenal Football Club, when we start talking about players like Hakimi, who clearly, I think he's 22, isn't he? Could be the right back for us for the next 8 years if that signing gets done. I don't know too much about Dusan Vlahovic, and you're going to teach us about pronunciations too, because from what you've said about Kolasinac, I've been pronouncing his name incorrectly for the last 3 or 4 years. Can you
Now,
talk
to be fair to you, Sophie, be fair to you, he did what a lot of Arsenal players do, and have noticed this. He anglicised it when he arrived.
Okay.
So as soon as he got there, he started saying Kolasinac. But in Germany, and he is brought up in Germany, they would say Kolasinac. So that's what they call him in Germany.
Okay.
But in England, he anglicised it to Kolasinac.
Okay, cool. And how do you pronounce Odegaard correctly?
So he has said when he arrived in England, he said Odegaard, which is fine as long as he's happy with that. My understanding is it's Odegaard. So, and you kind of swallow the D a little bit.
Okay.
But I think if he's happy with Odegaard, he's happy with it.
Okay, we'll get to him eventually because it plays into a lot of this stuff. Talk to us about the reality of the Konatés of the world, because it seems like he's Liverpool bound, the Hakimis of the world. Are Arsenal Football Club in that game? Are we in that bracket to sign these kinds of players?
I don't think so right now. I think if you were looking at a guy like Hakimi, he has been terrific since he got to Inter. I commentated on him a lot when he was in Germany with Dortmund. And I think his departure was really keenly felt by Dortmund, because not only was it about what he can bring in an attacking sense, but it was how he linked up with Jadon Sancho. And I genuinely believe, even though part of Sancho's dip in form at the start of the season was down to the Manchester United move that never actually materialised, I actually think Hakimi going was a massive part of it. Mm-hmm. When he got to Inter, it took him a while to learn the league. It took him a while to understand the tactical demands that Conte was placing upon him, but he got there. And he's going to be, I think Inter will win the league, and I think he'll have ended up being a very important part of that. And if Inter were to have to sell because of financial problems, and I don't think they'll get to that stage necessarily, I think, unfortunately, from an Arsenal point of view, there would be a lot of big hitters involved. And I actually think Real Madrid, his former club, would be one of those. And I just can't see Arsenal being top of that list. In terms of Konaté, Liverpool seem to have been, and it's only seemed to have been at the moment, but they seem to have been quite savvy. They seem to have been tracking him for a long, long time. It is a release clause issue. So 40 million euros is the price. So if Arsenal could gather that together, they could say to Leipzig, here you go, here's your 40 million, and then it's down to the player. So then they could be in the mix. But if they don't have European football and they don't have a recent Champions League track record, that makes it really hard.
Super Kev, do you think we've been able to attract players like Aubameyang and Lacazette and Thomas Partey and Gabriel without Champions League football over the last 2.5, 3 seasons? How do you sell an Arsenal vision and dream to a player like Hakimi, or any of those kind of players of that ilk? And I ask this with respect to both of you. The manager is a Paul at a lot of clubs sometimes. And I'm not saying Arteta isn't a Paul. Someone like Odegaard's come in and said he's great. Probably, wasn't the driving force behind him maybe going to Arsenal to begin with. A manager can pull players like that. Is this where maybe we come undone, Super Kev, with not having one of those influential, long-term managers with pedigree behind him who can really kind of turn a player? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you're being a bit harsh on Arteta here, because when you look at who was in for Gabriel, there were Man United was in. There was a lot of big teams in for him. Mikel Arteta won the day. He came because of the project. Partey as well. There were a lot of teams who wanted Partey. He came because of the project. Aubameyang came. We wasn't in the Champions League at the time. And Lacazette came. We weren't.
But the Wenger, that was Wenger.
No, but what I'm saying is the club wasn't in the Champions League. Mm-hmm. We're putting the Champions League as the be all and end all, but all of these players have come to the club when we haven't been in the Champions League. So there's got to be the draw of Arsenal is 1. 2, there has to be a plan from the manager. I mean, you're not going to get a good young Brazilian like Gabriel to come to Arsenal, and you're not playing Champions League football if he doesn't believe in what the manager's telling him. That's for sure.
Well, Unai Emery was the manager then, right?
No, not for Gabriel. No.
No, Martinelli. Sorry. I thought you mentioned Martinelli before.
So Martinelli's listen. Martinelli, he couldn't believe his luck. He's a young player playing in Brazil, who all of a sudden gets an opportunity to come to Arsenal. Fantastic for him, and he's done well, and he is the future. But I'm talking about them prime young players who can make a real difference to a team. And, Mikel Arteta has made a difference. Not everybody's going to come, that's for sure. Not everybody's going to come. But they have come because of him. They've said it themselves. So, we can't knock him for that, for getting them to the football club. The problem is, if he didn't get them to the football club, you could imagine what the fan base would say then.
Well, Edu's a pretty good negotiator, and I'd love to get the outside of you from Kevin Hatchard here, because Kevin, I think for the first time, I think luring Thomas Partey, I think that was the right time for him to move on for Atletico. There's rumors about the prowess and the negotiation skills of Arteta and Edu, of course. But I think going forward, in terms of the way football is now, the Premier League, the way these teams are attracting top players from City to Chelsea to United to Tottenham, even Leicester now, who've probably overtaken us in some regards. I'm not saying they're a bigger club, but they're definitely they're doing a better job in the Premier League than we have done over the last few seasons when it comes to signings. What's your thoughts on what Kev said and Arteta's attraction as a manager? And I think the Lacazettes and the Aubameyangs and some of those other guys were attracted to the club and the manager versus what might be a pickle now.
I think he's part of the picture. I think, he's a guy that had a huge amount of respect as a player. I think you look at his track record, it's strong. You look at the way he speaks about the game. I think he's a very impressive guy in that regard. So I could see, in terms of negotiating, he would put forward a compelling case. I still think London as a city, even in the times we live in at the moment, is still a massive draw for players. I still think that's a huge weapon for Arsenal. There's no question about that. I think there's numerous examples of players that would have looked at another club and Arsenal and thought, well, I'd love to live in London and settle there. And I think that's really helped them. I think that the tricky thing is, I totally understand what Kev's saying about the Champions League, that you have absolutely brought in good players without having that Champions League football. I think the longer you're out of it, the more of an issue it becomes. Because then players, rightly or wrongly, start to associate Arsenal with the Europa League. They start to think, that's not a serious Champions League club. Now, that's not going to work for every player, but I think for some players, if you've got Arsenal and you've got another club that's been in the Champions League the last 3, 4, 5 seasons, and Arsenal haven't, you're going to maybe be swayed by that. And I think not all players do care. Not all players have that as the top thing for them, but some do.
What's your take? We've talked a lot about what happens in the summer with the loanees we do have. Seems like Ceballos hasn't done enough this season to lock in a sale. On the other hand, Odegaard has completely solidified his place as a mini cult hero in a short space of time, and Arsenal fans want to make sure they buy him. I don't know if I have this right. The asking price might be 35, 40 million. Real Madrid have put 6 or 7 players on the docket for sales, Kevin. What's your take on, to us Arsenal fans, it seems like Ceballos goes back and we do everything to keep Odegaard. And if not, there's another player that has come into the frame, and that's Fekir. What's your take on that? And then I'll hand it over to Super Kev, because he covers La Liga, and Fekir maybe has come in with some baggage in terms of injuries, but a lot's playing out right now for us in this position. What's your take?
I think Fekir is a stunning player. I think he's a wonderful player to watch.
I like that word.
I think if you look at the stats, actually, He's one of the players that gets fouled the most often in La Liga. And I always think that's a good sign because it means he wants to carry the ball. It means he's attracting challenges. It means that he's creating space for other people. So I think he's always been that kind of player that could make things happen. Betis are an up and down side, so I think sometimes it's difficult to judge where he's at. But I think if you look beyond those injuries, and it is a risk, but every signing is a risk to some extent. But you know, he's played a lot for Lyon, really, and he's played a fair bit for Betis too. And I think you can certainly factor all that into the negotiations. So I think he is certainly an exciting option. I'm not sure about Ceballos, I have to say. I think there is a player in there. There is a talented player, technically, no question. I'm not sure he's consistent enough. I'm sure you guys have got, you know, a probably more rounded view on him as an Arsenal player. But from what I've seen, he still makes mistakes and he still hasn't kicked on in the way that we thought he would earlier in his career. Zinedine Zidane has never fancied him at Real Madrid, has never really given him an opportunity. And that brings us nicely to Odegaard, because there is a player who was desperate to play football when he came to Arsenal. That's all he wanted to do. He wanted the chance to shine. He was pulled out of a loan that was very successful at Real Sociedad. Didn't really want to go. He wanted to stay with Real Sociedad. He was brilliant for them, absolutely superb. And you're starting to see some of that form now in terms of making goals, in terms of scoring goals. I think he'd be a fabulous signing for Arsenal. And you're absolutely right. There is a list of players that Real Madrid are happy to let go because they need to raise funds, because they want to be part of that conversation for Erling Haaland. They want to be part of the conversation if Kylian Mbappe becomes available and doesn't sign a new contract with Paris Saint-Germain. So to do that, they need to raise funds because they've had a really big hit with COVID because of the matchday revenue and because of, bizarrely, weird as this may seem, the stadium tour, which is absolutely huge for them. That brings in quite a lot of money, and that's been nixed completely because of COVID. And they've also spent a huge amount of money on the stadium because they've been redeveloping the Bernabeu. So they've spent a lot of money. That's why they had a quiet summer. That's why they're keeping their powder dry to make a big marquee signing in the summer. The only way they're going to make that fly is to let players like Ceballos and Odegaard go for decent chunks of money.
Is it going to be one of those cases where a big signing has to happen for all of the other chips to fall? It seems like the big get for everybody this season is going to be Haaland. And, you know, it's City, it's Barcelona, it's Real Madrid. You know, we live, us Arsenal fans, Kevin, we live in a dream world where we say, well, if Odegaard signs, he'll just call his mate and then we'll mortgage the Emirates and we'll get Haaland playing up front for us. But is it a case of maybe it seems like a really big summer transfer window, yet without the normal amounts of money? Is Harry Kane going to stay at Spurs? Son now being linked to Bayern Munich. Arsenal with all these moving parts. Reece Nelson, Maitland-Niles, Willock. You've got Xhaka maybe talking about going back to Germany or showing an interest in going back to Germany. You got Bellerin for us who, you know, there's interest. I don't believe there's interest from Barcelona when they have Dest, but PSG. It feels like lots of moving parts for things to fall into place.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that's similar to most summers. You know, there's always that chain reaction. There's always an element of clubs waiting for certain deals to happen. And there's always an element of opportunity springing up where you didn't think there would be. So you will have long-term deals, like Liverpool have been working on this Konate deal potentially for quite some time. But there will also be situations where a player suddenly becomes available and you have to make a quick decision. So I think you're right. I think there'll be a correction. I think there has to be a correction in terms of the money. I think that was coming anyway, but COVID has accelerated that because every club out there, big or small, has had a big hit. And you look at, let's take Dortmund for an example. I mean, they're used to having 80,000 people in the ground every 2 weeks. That's a massive, massive hit for them. And if they then don't qualify for the Champions League, and they've got a massive game coming up this Saturday against Eintracht Frankfurt, if they lose that game, there's a 7-point gap between them and the top 4, because Frankfurt are 4th at the moment. So that is a huge situation. The feeling has always been with them this summer that Jadon Sancho was going to go. I think we've all kind of accepted that that's the case. But they may also have to do that Haaland deal as well if they finish outside the top 4. And the way things are moving and the way Mino Raiola, Haaland's agent, is kind of pushing everything, they obviously feel they're ahead of schedule, because I think they wanted to park him at Dortmund for a couple of seasons, let him develop and then move on. I still think there's something in that because he plays for an attack-minded team. He's happy where he is. He enjoys the squad that he plays with. So I still think there's something in him playing there for another year. But everybody wants to sign him. And for Dortmund, financially, it's a difference between way over 100 million euros and 75 million euros, which is what they would get next summer when the release clause kicks in.
Okay, so I want to get you out on these two things, because one of the areas that Kev and I have also talked about a lot is our goalkeeper. And as much as Leno's saved us, and along with Aubameyang's goals in the last couple seasons, his saves also were huge. Got injured, Emi Martinez comes in. Of course, we sell the asset. We need the money. It's understandable in this day and age, but also Leno was always going to be the future. Some kind of, faux pas this season. Generally went on a good run, 5 clean sheets, but after that, he's not been great, if we're going to be fair. Super Kev talked about Oblak. I'm not sure if that's on the cards. Donnarumma is rumoured to go to Chelsea. Are Arsenal in that game, Kevin, at all? Are we in the... Should we be in the goalkeeper game? Yeah.
Oblak's the best goalkeeper in the world. I believe that. I have believed that for quite some time now. And I think if he was to be on the market, you're looking at every big club in the world, because there is nobody right now. Obviously, if you've got a world-class goalkeeper, so Liverpool have got Alisson, they wouldn't be in that market. Manchester City have got Ederson, they probably wouldn't. But anybody who hasn't got that top-class, world-class goalkeeper is going to be in that market. My feeling about Leno has always been he's a goalkeeper that will make incredible saves, and there will be games where you will walk away and you will think, wow, he was incredible. We wouldn't have got the win without him, or we wouldn't have got the draw without him. But I've always felt there's a mistake in him. I've always felt that there are games where he doesn't command the penalty area enough, that he will make preventable errors. I go back to the Wolves game recently and that crazy sending off. A top-class goalkeeper doesn't do that. So I think he is a good goalkeeper. I've never thought he was a great goalkeeper. And I haven't really seen anything at Arsenal to disabuse me of that notion. I think he's good. I don't think he's a top-class goalkeeper. And I don't think a club that's looking to win a title or looking to win a Champions League or something along those lines, I don't think he's their goalkeeper. So I think that's an area in the long term, as Arsenal plot their way back into that upper echelon, I think that's an area they'd look to improve.
Super Kev, I think you agree with that, don't you? Because you talk all the time, and look how the teams around us have been building year on year.
I'm sitting back here, Kev.
You're loving Kevin. Just get him on replay, man.
Kev, you just keep going. Listen, I think Leno is the same. Leno's a decent keeper, but if you want to be the best, you've got to have a world-class goalkeeper. If you want to be the best,
yeah,
and for me, he's not in the top 10. Nowhere near for me.
Yeah,
Oblak is the best.
I actually think, personally, from what I've seen, and I know it was a much smaller sample size, and I've been watching Leno in the Bundesliga for years, I actually would have kept Martinez, and I would have sold Leno, personally, because I actually think, to me, Martinez looks like a much more solid goalkeeper. Again, you're not talking about top level. You're not talking about a world-class goalkeeper, but I think you're talking about a more reliable goalkeeper. I think you're talking about a guy that's going to make fewer errors.
Kev, the problem is with this debate has raged between the Gooners all the time. And Martinez has played really well this season, but he still made mistakes at Aston Villa.
Yeah, that's true.
That's cost them. So what I'm saying is we need a goalkeeper who we can rely on week in, week out, game in, game out. And if we're serious, we got to go and get one of the top ones. And Martinez is a good goalkeeper. Yes, he is. Leno's a good goalkeeper. But for me, they are not top class.
I'll tell you what's interesting about the goalkeeping situation. And I've been intrigued for quite a long time about this. There's a guy in the Bundesliga called Koen Castells, who is Wolfsburg's goalkeeper. I think he's tremendous. I genuinely think outside of Manuel Neuer, you won't find a better goalkeeper in the Bundesliga. He's tall, he's commanding, he's got much more vocal. When he was younger, found it difficult sometimes to command the area. He's always been big, but he wasn't as commanding. Always been a great shot stopper. But now you're genuinely, you know, when goalkeepers get to that stage, and Neuer's at that, and Oblak's at that, where if they let a goal in, and I put Alisson in there as well, when they let a goal in, you're like, oh wow, okay, how did that happen?
Yeah, because they.
I feel like he's nearly there, Castells, and I feel like he's got loads of experience now. He's been captain of Wolfsburg in quite a few games now, and I'm amazed the club hasn't gone for him at like a top level club. And I obviously would put Arsenal in that top bracket, but in terms of their results, not now. But that's the kind of signing where I think Arsenal need to go, look, nobody's really gone for him. Let's go get him. They are out there. Now, he wouldn't be cheap, but they are out there. He doesn't have to be an Oblak. That's the fantasy dream scenario.
Yeah.
But there are really good goalkeepers and really good players in other positions who some of the top clubs may not have gone for.
Yeah.
I think he'd be a great signing for Arsenal. I really do.
Okay, so I'm going to get you out on this one. Everyone's loving this, by the way. We're going to have to get you back for a part 2 if you're up for it, Kevin.
Yeah, definitely.
Because this is just too good. So a lot of the squaddies are asking about what you would do if you were Arteta and Arsenal, knowing the money that we have to spend. We've done this on our show. You know so much of the talent in Europe. Some of our listeners have been talking about the Leipzig goalkeeper. Weghorst keeps coming up over and over. The Fiorentina player I mentioned earlier, Vlahovic, which, who, to be honest with you, I watched Serie A, but I haven't seen a lot of Fiorentina. So I'm not going to sit here and sound like an expert knowing his game, his style, whether he fits us. What do you think is going to happen at Arsenal this summer? What's your take on Arteta? And if by October, if we're in the same position, does he carry on? And do you think we have a shot of winning the Champions League?
Europa.
The Europa League. See, I always want to go to the Champions League.
I mean, that last question was a tough one.
Crawl before you can walk.
Hover before you can fly.
Yeah. Do I think Arsenal have a shot of winning the Europa League? Yes, absolutely. I think they do. I think because what they've shown with that FA Cup run last season is that in those high pressure games, they can perform. They can get those wins against top opposition. They haven't been able to sustain it over a long period of time, but they can do it in those one-off games. So I think, and the Benfica win, wobbly as it was, did show that grit and determination, and did show in Saka, in Aubameyang, you've got players who can turn a game, who can make that difference when it really matters. So I think they can win that. In terms of Arteta, I like what he's done in terms of changing the fabric of the club, in the sense that they looked really fragile. They looked really ill-disciplined for a long time. I still think they make mistakes. I still think there'll be errors where you think, same old Arsenal. But slowly but surely, I think Kev's right. I think he's wiping that away. And it may be down the track that some other coach comes in and benefits from that work that he's done, because that absolutely had to happen. Defensively, they do look more solid. And now he's trying to be more expansive. The worry for me, if I was an Arsenal fan, would be the pace of change is a bit too slow at the moment. But I do think we need to see how this summer goes. I think if they got rid of him, that would be an error. I think they need to keep him, let him have a summer, let them work with him to bring in players. But yes, if he then makes another poor start, if they then are nowhere near the top 6, say, in October, early November, I think they've got a big decision to make. In terms of bringing players in, I mean, you mentioned Weghorst.
Mm-hmm.
That, for me, is the kind of signing that makes absolute sense. Now, you have to play a certain way if you have him. So it's not going to be the same if you've got Aubameyang through the middle. You'll have noticed me saying Aubameyang. There's another player that came to England and anglicised his name because we all called him Aubameyang in the Bundesliga because that's how he said his name
love
when
it.
he was there.
Say it the way it's said in Germany. I love it. It's a learning curve for all of us.
So it's not the same as when you've got him through the middle as when you've got a big guy like Weghorst, but he does run in behind. He does bring other players into play, and he is a natural goal scorer. And what I mean by that is his finishing is outstanding. If you look at his time in the Bundesliga, it's his 3rd season now. He's already up to 50 Bundesliga goals. The season before he left the Netherlands for RZ, he scored 27 goals in all competitions. I know there's a lower premium on goals in the Netherlands. I get that. But there's a guy with a proven track record season after season. And again, nobody's pulled the trigger on him. And I think if Arsenal were to want a physical guy in attack, a guy you could build an attack around, a focal point to take pressure off the guys behind him, I think he'd be perfect. And I think that's the kind of signing that if you don't have the kind of money to make a 60, 70 million euro signing or pound signing, then you play a bit smarter and you look at guys who have proven track records elsewhere. And I think he's one of those.
Okay, so I also have to ask you this. I lied. This is where we go into a little bit of extra time. Marcus Thuram is a player that I've long admired. Kev and I have talked about him a lot. I know the spitting incident was a little vile, a little more than vile. I don't think that's his true character. Maybe his head went.
No, I don't either. But
okay, Kev.
I think it's a lesson I'd have liked him to learn, and I hope he has. I think it's a big setback for him, and I think it's affected him quite a lot, to be honest. I don't think he's been the same player this season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's not the guy that burst onto the scene last season. There's a lot to like. He runs at defenders. He draws fouls. Again, he wins penalties because he can go inside, he can go outside, he turns defenders. I like that. In front of goal, I think he can be a bit more consistent, but that will come, I think. I think actually, and Marco Rosa, his coach at Gladbach, has talked about this. I think he's one of the players that's really suffered from the absence of fans. I think he's a guy that really gets that vibe. He really has to get that energy from fans, and it really pushes him on. And you look at that celebration that I don't know if you've seen this, but he's got this thing he's developed at Gladbach that after they win a game, he would put what he perceives to be the man of the match's shirt on the corner flag.
On the corner flag, yeah.
And he'll run in front of the fans and he'll go all across the stand, and the fans will love that. And he just hasn't been the same player. So I think at the moment, it might be a good time for Arsenal to make that move because, again, he's a player that maybe if the top clubs in terms of the Champions League, top clubs, are looking at him and thinking, oh, he's not had a great season, maybe we won't pull the trigger on him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where Arsenal have to look. And that might sound negative about Arsenal. It might sound like I'm saying that Arsenal are also rounds and they're not big contenders. But if we're being pragmatic and we're being honest, they're not on the level of some of those big hitters right now. If we're honest, they're not on the level of Man City or Real Madrid. You have to be honest about that. And the only way you get back to that level is by being honest about that and saying, okay, let's look at the players that those guys aren't going for, and we'll get the best of those. And we'll develop them with a plan, with a strategy, and build our squad. Doesn't matter what they're doing, we'll build our squad. And then that's how you get that you have to have a low turnover. You have to say, right, these are the guys we want for the next 2 or 3 years. Not let's do some loans, or let's put some sticking plasters on it. Let's do what we can for now. You have to think, right, these are our guys for the next 2 or 3 years. And yes, there'll be a couple of moves here and there, but there has to be a plan. And I think fans identify with that. I think fans look at that and think, okay, we get it. And they'll be more tolerant, I think, of backward steps if you have that overall.
A lot of people agreeing with you in chat right now. I don't know if you can see it, but they're funny.
I'm telling
you. This one, we're scavenging bins. I know, it's so funny. But yeah, no, great stuff, Kev. And a few of our listeners have asked who you support. I'm not sure if you can pledge allegiance to any badge.
I can. I've never had a problem with that. You wouldn't know it from the accent, but I am a Scouser. I was born in Liverpool, so I'm a Liverpool fan, born and bred. My old man. I know, but you've got to admit it. My old man followed Liverpool all around Europe, so he was at those cup finals. Hey, come on, you can't have me on here, and 89. You can't be giving me grief after 89.
Kev, listen. We started off so well.
I know.
At the death, just like
I ruined it.
Yeah, you ruined it. Nah, never mind. Kev, top man. Absolute top
stuff.
Man.
Yeah, brilliant.
Top man.
This is why I've been wanting to get Kevin on the show. Just knows his football. Brilliant stuff. Kev, tell all of our listeners where they can find you. There've been hundreds of them in live chat tonight. We're going to replay the show as well. Let everyone know where they can find your awesome work.
So I am on Twitter at Kevin Hatchard. I'm also on the Bundesliga World feed, which tends to go out, I think, on BT Sport quite a lot. So I'm on there. Also Amazon. I do radio commentaries on the Bundesliga for Amazon pretty much every Sunday. And we've got a little highlight show as well. So I pop up in various places. Talksport as well. I'm on a
Brilliant stuff. Kevin, thank you so much for your time. We so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for the added time as well. And we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, mate.
Kev. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Bye. Top shelf or what, Kev?
Good knowledge. Very good knowledge.
Right.
Very, very good knowledge. Good outlook. And and listen, he knows his players. And I think it's important. And it's good that the squaddies understand that, the hybrid squad and yourself are bringing on people who added value to what we're talking about. I think it's really, really good. And just at the end there, that Liverpool bit.
I mean, we were doing so well. Why did I?
So well, getting on with him. I was sitting back. I was like, "Go on, Kev." Now I dragged the mic off him. Give me that. I'm broke the neck.
I thought when Leeds was coming, I don't know, but yeah, so happy.
Not that lot down the road, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Love that you guys enjoyed it too. Just a brilliant show with Kev. Super Kev, anything you want to add tonight? Anything going on? I mean, listen, this is the reality. The assessment is really important, talking about how we're still a big club, but we can't compete financially with the big club. So finding those gems is going to be important this summer.
Yeah, and that's why you have to have a plan. Edu and Mikel Arteta have already said that they've got their targets already. That isn't not having a plan. That's having a plan, Sophie. So they know who they want, and it's going to be revealed once we get to the summer. Now, it would make a real good difference with a Europa League in the bag and Champions League football next season. Now, that would be great. We know it's going to be tough, but hey, listen, we're in the business end of the season, and our best player, best goal scorer, needs to turn up, needs to shine them boots and get going. We have a chance. We're in there with a fighter's chance, that's for sure. And we're going to find out on Thursday in the Zagreb game.
And the Slavia Prague game,
Prague game, I mean, yeah.
you're just still thinking about the Tottenham getting, caned by Dinamo Zagreb in that last game, right? Or was it?
Yeah,
Zagreb? Yeah. I mean,
Zagreb,
it just permeates,
Zagreb.
doesn't
It
it?
just kicks in my head, I just mentioned that boy, them lot down the road, and Zagreb came into my head now.
Exactly.
Hit the like button, hit the like button.
Hit the like. That's what Kev's thinking. The rule.
Like
if you hate Tottenham, hit the like button.
But for us, it's so important, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But we can't. Beggars can't be choosers, and we can't be choosy about who we play now. We've just got to go for every game.
Yeah,
League and Europa League,
and be fearless, right, Super Kev?
Yeah, fearless. We've got to spin the squad. We've got to spin that squad, and we've got to rotate at times. Of course, we have. But whoever comes in, we've got to go for it.
Absolutely. And Richard, thank you. Hi, Highbury Squad team, Squaddies. Your show's the best on YouTube and must watch for all Gooners around the world. Wednesday night show topped everything. Truly fantastic.
Thank you.
Sheer luck as well. And many, many others who have commented tonight. The usual crowd and anyone who's new, subscribe. And remember, if you hate Tottenham, hit that like button. We're going to be back tomorrow. We're not going to talk about the Liverpool game just yet. We're going to make you wait a little bit longer for our predictions. We should have asked Kev Hatchard for his prediction. I'll get it off him on Twitter. But yeah, we really appreciate you all joining us. And don't forget, I'm not sure if there's any tickets left, Super Kev. I know you may have... Did you buy them all?
Sophie, I've got to be honest.
Did you buy them all?
I didn't even go and look, because you know what? If I go and look, I'm gonna buy some. I'm not even looking. And I gotta leave it to the squaddies because I want it. You know what I mean? I want it.
I know. There's two. I've wanted this one so bad, and I wanted the Vieira one too, but I'm doing the right thing. There you go, guys. Go to our friends at footballprizes.co.uk. Thierry Henry shirt. I'm not sure if there are tickets left for tomorrow's auction, but you know what time it is. We're going to give away a free ticket right now. And you know what, Kev? I haven't even prepared a question. So I'm going to do something off the top of my head. What could we ask these kids tonight that would be interesting? Let's think about this. 6:40. I know, Newman. I hope you bought one already. Here we go. You know what? We did a tribute to the great David Rocastle on our show. The first person to email at the highburysquad@gmail.com, from one Arsenal legend, Thierry Henry, to an earlier legend and an always legend, both of them in David Rocastle. What was the date and the team where David Rocastle made his pro debut for the Arsenal? When did he make his debut and what team did he play against? The highburysquad@gmail.com. The first person... Timestamp. I always do it by the timestamp, Super Kev.
Mm-hmm.
Gets a free ticket.
Free ticket.
Yep. And we
Hold
will
on. What was that? What's the email? I'm already on it now, Chuck. I want to win it.
Good stuff. So send that to us, the highburysquad@gmail.com. And thank you all for joining us once again. So send it in, and whoever wins the ticket, we will put you in the pool tomorrow night for the Thierry Henry signed shirt. Brilliant stuff, Super Kev. Thanks as always for being here. We couldn't do it without you.
No, it was always a pleasure. I thought Kev was a really good guest.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
Very sharp, knows his stuff, and spoiled it right at the end.
Really did.
And I really hope, I'm not making prediction, but I really hope we spoil it for them through the 90 minutes.
Tomorrow, Kev, we're going to go at it tomorrow.
Yeah,
it's all about
it tomorrow.
Arsenal versus Liverpool. Until then, tell the crew.
Until then, guys, listen, thanks for joining us today. Keep hitting that like button if you hate that lot down the road. And you know, it's always Arsenal. Come on, you Gunners.